let you go now, Jeannie. And thanks for everything. Have a nice trip.
Ever wonder why Jeannie's belly button was television's most controversial body part? Or how an elephant completely humiliated Larry Hagman on set? From bourbon bottles becoming TV icons to Looney Tunes legends creating opening credits, I Dream of Jeannie had behind-the-scenes chaos that was far stranger than any genie magic. The show that made Barbara Eden a star harbored shocking secrets about drunken behavior, exploding props, and censorship battles that seem absurd today. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about I Dream of Jeannie. Fact 1. Jeannie's bottle was a whiskey decanter. When viewers tuned in to watch I Dream of Jeannie between 1965 and 1970, they saw what appeared to be an exotic, mystical genie bottle that looked like it belonged in an Arabian palace. The truth behind this iconic prop is far more down-to-earth and surprisingly affordable.
Jeannie, good night.
Good night, Master.
Jeannie's famous bottle was actually a 1964 Jim Beam Christmas edition bourbon whiskey decanter that originally sold for just $5.99 at liquor stores across America. According to the show's history, either creator Sidney Sheldon or the first director Gene Nelson was walking past a liquor store when he spotted the distinctive Jim Beam decanter in the window and immediately knew it was perfect for the show. The production team purchased the bourbon bottle and brought it to the art department, where talented employees hand-painted it with elaborate gold leaf designs to transform it from a simple whiskey container into what millions of viewers would recognize as Jeannie's magical home. The bottle was officially called Beam's Choice Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, and it came with a decorative design that the prop department enhanced with purple trim and intricate gold detailing. The transformation was so successful that nobody watching the show would have guessed they were looking at something you could buy at your local liquor store for less than $6. What makes this fact even more interesting is that the show went through multiple versions of the bottle throughout its run. During the first season, which was filmed in black and white, the bottle had a different appearance with golden vines painted on it. When the show switched to color for season 2, the art department created the now iconic pink and purple version that became synonymous with the series. The original stopper for the bottle was actually left behind on the beach during the pilot episode, so Tony Nelson replaced it with a clear glass stopper from a 1956 Old Granddad bourbon bottle he had at home. Later episodes showed Jeannie returning to retrieve her original painted stopper, which you can still see in close-up shots with the plastic rings that held the cork in place. Fact 2. The belly button controversy was media created. Today, it seems absurd that a belly button could cause a scandal, but in 1965, Barbara Eden's navel became one of television's most talked-about controversies, and the whole thing started as a joke. When I Dream of Jeannie first began filming, NBC executives had no problem with Eden's costume, which featured high-waisted harem pants and a crop top that exposed her midriff. In the early episodes, Eden's belly button was occasionally visible when she lifted her arms or when the costume shifted during filming, and nobody at the network seemed to care or even notice. The entire controversy began when a reporter, whom Eden later identified as being from The Hollywood Reporter, visited the set and became fixated on her navel. He kept asking Eden if he could see her belly button, turning it into a running joke between them. Eden, playing along with the absurdity of the situation, jokingly told him she would charge him a nickel for a peek, and then kept raising the price each time he asked. The reporter thought this was hilarious and wrote an article about Jeannie's supposedly forbidden belly button, and other media outlets picked up on the story, turning it into a widespread topic of discussion. Once the story gained momentum, producer George Schlatter from Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In decided he wanted to premiere Eden's belly button on his show as a comedic stunt. This plan actually frightened NBC executives, who suddenly realized they had a potential controversy on their hands. According to Eden, George Schlatter later said he had never seen so many suits sitting around a table in his life, all seriously discussing someone's anatomy. The network executives held an actual board meeting to debate whether or not a belly button should be visible on television, and they ultimately issued what became known as the No Navel Edict. From that point forward, NBC became extremely strict about keeping Eden's navel covered. The network's censors would carefully review footage to make sure her belly button never appeared on screen, even though the same network had no problem showing bikini-clad women with visible navels in beach scenes on other shows. Fact 3. Barbara Eden was pregnant during filming. When Barbara Eden walked into the meeting to discuss her new role as Jeannie, she had no idea she was about to deliver news that could have ended her career before it even started. On the exact same day that NBC officially picked up I Dream of Jeannie for production in 1965, Eden confirmed to creator Sidney Sheldon that she was pregnant with her first child.
Dean, I'm pregnant. And he said, well, we'll just put it on and see. So
In the 1960s, pregnancy was rarely shown on television, and most studios would have immediately replaced a leading actress who announced she was expecting. Lucille Ball had only recently broken ground by appearing visibly pregnant on I Love Lucy, but that decision remained controversial and uncommon in the industry. Sheldon faced a difficult choice, but he decided to keep Eden as his star and work around her growing belly instead. The production team moved quickly, filming the first 10 episodes back-to-back as fast as they possibly could before Eden's pregnancy became too obvious to hide. Director Gene Nelson came up with a creative solution he jokingly called the ATB shot, which stood for Above the Baby. The camera crew would position shots from higher angles, focusing on Eden's face and upper body while keeping the frame well above her midsection. In some scenes, they had to follow Jeannie's arm across the room rather than showing her full body, creating unusual but workable camera movements. The costume department added layer upon layer of colorful veils and flowing fabric to Jeannie's already elaborate harem outfit, transforming Eden into what she later described as a walking tent. Larry Hagman recalled the frantic pace of production, explaining that they rushed through those early episodes because Eden was getting bigger and bigger, so the crew kept adding more veils and fabric to maintain the illusion. Despite the challenges, the creative solutions worked well enough that most viewers never noticed anything unusual during those first episodes, and Eden successfully gave birth to her son Matthew during a production hiatus, returning to complete the series. Fact 4. Larry Hagman urinated. All over the set, behind the scenes of I Dream of Jeannie, Larry Hagman's behavior became increasingly erratic as the show progressed, and one incident in particular shocked everyone on set. According to Barbara Eden's memoir, Genie Out of the Bottle, Hagman's frustration with what he saw as weak and overused scripts led him down a dark path of self-medication that included drinking vast quantities of champagne, smoking marijuana, and even using LSD. The tension came to a head when Hagman, in what Eden described as an absolutely shocking display, actually urinated all over the I Dream of Jeannie set. The incident was part of a larger pattern of troubling behavior that plagued the production throughout its 5-year run. Hagman would start every single day at the studio by drinking massive amounts of champagne, and between scenes he would hide away in his dressing room to smoke pot and consume even more champagne, all in what he claimed was an effort to maintain what he called a calm serenity. But the reality was far from calm, as his co-stars and crew members had to deal with increasingly bizarre and inappropriate actions. Eden wrote candidly about the incident in her memoir, not holding back on the disturbing details of what it was like to work alongside someone spiraling out of control. The problem stemmed partly from Hagman's deep insecurity about playing second fiddle to Eden's character, who consistently tested higher with audiences and received more magazine covers and interviews. As the son of Broadway legend Mary Martin, Hagman desperately wanted to prove himself as a star in his own right, and the pressure of living in his mother's shadow while watching his co-star receive more attention created what Eden described as tremendous pressure that he put on himself and everyone around him. Despite this appalling behavior, producers kept Hagman on the show, though they did seriously consider replacing him at one point, even going so far as to write a storyline where Tony would lose Jeannie and actor Darren McGavin would find her instead. Fact 5. An elephant farted on Larry Hagman. Working with live animals on a television set in the 1960s was always unpredictable. But Larry Hagman experienced one of the most embarrassing moments of his career during the filming of I Dream of Jeannie, when an elephant made its opinion of his performance abundantly clear. The incident occurred during the show's production when the script called for a scene featuring a real elephant alongside the actors, and Hagman was understandably nervous about working with such a massive animal on the cramped studio set. According to Hagman's own memoir, titled Hello, Darlin', Tall and Absolutely True, Tales About My Life.
Ready?
Yeah?
What do you do with that?
He protested having the elephant positioned so close to him during the scene, expressing his concerns to the director and crew about the potential dangers of working in such proximity to the giant creature. As Hagman stood there voicing his objections, the elephant apparently decided it had heard enough of the actor's complaints. The animal lifted its tail and broke wind, as Hagman described it, literally all over him, covering the actor in a most undignified manner. In his memoir, Hagman reflected on the humiliating moment with his characteristic sense of humor, writing that perhaps that was what the elephant thought of his acting. The incident became one of the many legendary behind-the-scenes stories from the I Dream of Jeannie set, showcasing the unpredictable nature of working with live animals in television production during that era. While special effects and computer-generated imagery would eventually eliminate the need for such risky animal encounters on set. In the mid-1960s, shows like I Dream of Jeannie had no choice but to use real animals when scripts called for them, leading to these kinds of unforgettable and often unpleasant experiences for the cast and crew. Fact 6. The iconic blink was invented by a dancer. One of the most recognizable gestures in television history. Jeannie's crossed arms and quick blink that made magic happen wasn't actually planned in advance. The signature move that became synonymous with the show was created spontaneously by Gene Nelson, the series' first director, who brought a unique background to the production. Nelson wasn't just a television director. He was an accomplished dancer and choreographer who had starred in numerous Hollywood musicals during the 1940s and 50s, including appearances in films like Oklahoma and The West Point Story. His experience with movement and physical performance gave him an instinctive understanding of how to create memorable visual moments that would translate well on screen. When it came time to figure out how Jeannie would perform her magic, Nelson drew on his dance training to devise something simple, yet distinctive. Barbara Eden herself confirmed in interviews that Nelson came up with the crossed arms and blink gesture, and remarkably, it didn't take any time at all to develop. The move was so intuitive and natural that it became an instant part of the character's identity from the very beginning of the show. Eden told interviewers that the creation of the gesture happened quickly and effortlessly, which is particularly impressive considering how much thought usually goes into establishing a character's signature traits. The brilliance of Nelson's invention was in its simplicity. The gesture was easy for Eden to perform repeatedly without fatigue. It photographed beautifully on camera, and it was distinctive enough that viewers could instantly recognize it and associate it with the character. The crossed arms created a clean, elegant silhouette that fit perfectly with Jeannie's harem outfit, while the blink added just the right touch of whimsy and magic. This one simple choreographic choice became so iconic that it's still instantly recognizable more than 50 years later, and it's difficult to imagine the character without it. The gesture was imitated by countless fans and became a permanent part of popular culture, all thanks to a dancer-turned-director who understood the power of physical storytelling. Fact 7. Looney Tunes legend created the opening. When you think of the iconic I Dream of Jeannie opening sequence with its playful animation of the genie bottle and swirling pink smoke, you might not realize it was created by one of Hollywood's greatest animation legends. Isidore Fries-Freleng, the Oscar-winning director behind some of the most beloved Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoons, was responsible for bringing Genie's animated introduction to life. Freleng had already made his mark in animation history by creating and directing over 300 cartoons featuring characters like Bugs Bunny, Tweety, Sylvester, Porky Pig, and Yosemite Sam, winning 5 Academy Awards along the way. After Warner Brothers closed down their animation studio in 1963, Freleng partnered with David DePatie to form DePatie-Freleng Enterprises, and one of their early projects was creating the opening title sequence for I Dream of Jeannie. Freleng actually created 2 different animated openings for the show. The first was a black and white version used in the pilot episode and from episode 9 onward during the first season, which aired in 1965. When the show switched to color for its second season in September of 1966, Freleng expanded and redesigned the animation to take full advantage of color television. This new sequence featured an animated depiction of Captain Nelson's space capsule splashing down on the beach, Jeannie dancing out of her newly decorated purple and pink bottle, kissing Nelson, and then being sucked back into the bottle at the end. The same studio that brought you the Pink Panther cartoons and even contributed special effects work to the original Star Wars movie, specifically animating the lightsaber blades, was behind Genie's magical entrance into living rooms across America. Despite creating one of television's most recognizable opening sequences, DePatie-Freleng Enterprises was never credited in the show's closing credits, which was typical practice for title animation work during the 1960s. Fact 8. Around 12 bottles were broken. During production. If you've ever wondered how Jeannie made that magical puff of pink smoke when she appeared from her bottle, the answer involved a lot of heat, chemicals, and broken glass. The production team behind I Dream of Jeannie didn't have the luxury of modern computer-generated effects, so they had to create Jeannie's signature smoke effect using real smoke packs and special chemicals inside the actual bottle prop. This process was so intense that it regularly destroyed the bottles they were using, and over the course of the show's 5-season run from 1965 to 1970, the crew went through an estimated 12 different bottles. The show used what they called a stunt bottle specifically for scenes that required the smoke effect, and this particular bottle took the brunt of the punishment. Every time they needed to film Jeannie emerging in a cloud of pink smoke, the crew would rig the bottle with smoke-producing chemicals and heat elements that would create that billowing effect audiences loved. The problem was that the combination of extreme heat and harsh chemicals would cause the glass to crack, chip, or completely shatter, making the bottle unusable for future filming. This meant the prop department had to constantly have backup bottles ready to go, each one carefully hand-painted with gold leaf to match the iconic look that viewers recognized. The original bottles were 1964 Jim Beam Christmas Edition whiskey decanters, and finding replacements wasn't always easy since they needed to match perfectly for continuity. The production crew became experts at painting and decorating new bottles to look identical to the ones that had been destroyed. Some bottles broke during filming, while others were damaged during the cleanup process after the smoke effects were completed. Barbara Eden was given one of the surviving bottles on the last day of filming, which she still owns today, and it's now displayed at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History as a piece of television history. Fact 9. Barbara Eden played 3 characters. Barbara Eden didn't just play one role on I Dream of Jeannie. She actually played 3 distinct characters throughout the show's 5-season run, showcasing her impressive range as an actress. While everyone knows her as the lovable blonde genie in the pink costume, Eden also took on 2 other major roles that many viewers didn't even realize were played by the same person. The most famous of these dual roles was Jeannie's evil twin sister, who was also named Jeannie, but went by Jeannie 2 in the scripts. This character was Jeannie's complete opposite in every way. She had dark brunette hair instead of blonde, wore a green costume instead of pink, and was conniving and mischievous rather than sweet and innocent. Jeannie 2 appeared in multiple episodes throughout the series, always trying to steal Tony away from her sister or cause chaos in some way. The character was actually created by a former Bewitched writer named James Henderson, who had been fired from that show when it was discovered he was writing for both programs at the same time. What's really interesting is that Eden received fan mail from viewers asking who played Jeannie's sister, completely unaware that it was Barbara herself in a brunette wig.
He keeps me in that stuffy old bottle all day long until the ashtrays in one of his limousines gets filled up.
She managed to create such distinct personalities for the two characters that people genuinely thought they were watching two different actresses. Eden demonstrated real versatility in these scenes, often playing against herself in carefully choreographed sequences where both characters appeared on screen together. Then in Season 4, Eden took on yet another role when she started playing Jeannie's mother. Two different actresses had previously portrayed this character in earlier first-season episodes, but the producers decided to have Eden take over the part for all remaining appearances. This meant that in some episodes, viewers could see Eden playing both the daughter and the mother, adding another layer of complexity to the production. The decision to consolidate these roles under one actress was likely both a cost-saving measure and a testament to Eden's acting abilities and her importance to the show. Fact 10. Larry Hagman's mother was Broadway legend Mary Martin. Larry Hagman's mother was Mary Martin, one of the biggest Broadway stars of the 20th century, and that relationship cast a long shadow over his entire career. Martin wasn't just any stage actress. She was a genuine theatrical legend.
What was your name?
Mary Martin.
Gracie tells me you're a singer.
She does.
Well, you are.
Oh, yes, I am.
Who won a Tony Award in 1954 for playing Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up, and starred in other massive Broadway hits like South Pacific and The Sound of Music. For decades, she was considered the Queen of Broadway, commanding stages and audiences with a presence that few could match. Growing up as the son of such an iconic performer meant that Larry Hagman lived much of his life in her overwhelming shadow, constantly trying to prove that he could be just as successful and talented as his famous mother. According to A&E's biography series, Hagman and his mother were quite distant for many years, only becoming close later in Martin's life. This emotional distance during his formative years created a tremendous amount of pressure on Hagman as he pursued his own acting career. He desperately wanted to show the world, and more importantly, show his mother, that he could achieve the same level of stardom and recognition that she had earned. Friends and colleagues noted that this deep need for validation drove many of his decisions throughout his career, and it particularly affected his behavior during the I Dream of Jeannie years. When the show premiered in 1965, Hagman was frustrated that Barbara Eden's character received more attention and magazine covers than his character, Major Tony Nelson. Creator Sidney Sheldon later wrote that Larry wanted to be the star and wanted it immediately, largely because he was trying to demonstrate that he could be as successful as Mary Martin. This intense pressure, combined with his insecurities about playing second fiddle to Eden's Jeannie, contributed directly to the difficult behavior that plagued the production, including his substance use and antagonistic attitude toward guest stars. The weight of his mother's legacy never fully lifted from Hagman's shoulders until he finally achieved his own massive success years later playing J.R. Ewing on Dallas. Fact 11. A lion roared at Hagman for refusing to bond. Working with wild animals on a Hollywood set is always unpredictable. But Larry Hagman learned this lesson the hard way during the first season of I Dream of Jeannie. The show needed a lion for a particular episode, and a 900-pound male lion was brought to the set for filming. Barbara Eden, who had worked with lions on previous film sets and considered herself somewhat of a lion expert, knew exactly how to handle the situation safely and calmly. Eden understood that the key to working with big cats was letting them become familiar with you before the cameras started rolling. She explained to Hagman that he needed to stand very still and allow the lion to smell him first, which would help the animal recognize him as non-threatening. Then, once the lion finished getting acquainted, Hagman should lean forward very slowly and gently stroke the animal to build trust and rapport. It was a simple bonding process that Eden had used successfully before, and she felt confident it would make the filming go smoothly. However, Hagman was having absolutely none of it. He flat out refused to go through the bonding ritual with the lion, reportedly shouting that he was not going to make friends with any lion. Eden tried to convince him that it was necessary for everyone's safety and for the scene to work properly, but Hagman remained stubbornly opposed to the whole idea. So when it finally came time to shoot the scene, the lion had bonded well with Eden, but had never been properly introduced to her co-star. The moment the king of the jungle laid eyes on the unfamiliar Larry Hagman, the animal let out what Eden later described as an almighty roar that echoed across the entire soundstage. The terrifying sound sent Hagman running off the set immediately, and several members of the production crew bolted right behind him in fear. Hagman himself later confirmed this embarrassing incident at a 2011 reunion panel with Eden, admitting that his refusal to follow her expert advice had backfired spectacularly. Fact 12. The safe combination contest was dubbed Last Minute. During the second season of I Dream of Jeannie, the show created an elaborate multi-part storyline that stretched across 4 episodes and turned into one of television's most unusual viewer contests. The story began with a 2-part episode that aired in November of 1966, where Jeannie gets trapped inside a safe, and the only way to free her is by figuring out the correct combination. The producers decided to turn this into an interactive contest where viewers at home could submit their guesses for what the 3-number combination might be, with the winner receiving a prize once the answer was revealed. The contest episode spread out over 4 weeks, building suspense as audiences waited to see who would win and what the magic numbers would be. But here's where things got weird. The producers hadn't actually decided what the combination would be when they filmed the episodes. They deliberately kept the answer secret until the very last minute, right before the final episode was set to air. This created a major technical challenge because Larry Hagman's character, Major Nelson, had to say the combination out loud on screen to open the safe and free Jeannie. If you watch those episodes carefully, you'll notice something strange. Whenever Hagman speaks the combination, the camera angle conveniently hides his mouth behind the safe, or the shot cuts away to show Jeannie's reaction instead of Nelson actually saying the numbers. This wasn't an accident or a stylistic choice. The crew had to film it this way because they literally didn't know what numbers Hagman should say. Once the producers finally settled on 4, 9, 7 as the winning combination just before the episode aired, they brought Hagman into a recording studio and had him dub in his voice saying those specific numbers. The audio was then carefully synced to match the footage where his mouth wasn't visible. At the end of the episode, Barbara Eden appeared during the closing credits to personally announce the winning combination and congratulate the contest winner, finally revealing the answer that viewers had been guessing for an entire month. Fact 13. Producers almost replaced. Hagman with Darren McGavin. Larry Hagman's behavior on the set of I Dream of Jeannie became so disruptive that the show's producers reached a breaking point and seriously considered replacing him with another actor. At the top of their list was Darren McGavin, who would later become famous for his role in The Night Stalker and as the father in A Christmas Story. The producers didn't just discuss the idea casually. They actually went so far as to write a complete storyline that would have explained Hagman's departure from the show. In this planned scenario, Major Tony Nelson would somehow lose Jeannie, and McGavin's character would be the one to find her bottle and become her new master. The problems with Hagman stemmed from his frustration with what he perceived as weak and repetitive scripts, combined with his struggle to accept playing second fiddle to Barbara Eden, who was getting all the magazine covers and public attention. To cope with the pressure and his insecurities about living up to his famous mother Mary Martin's legacy, Hagman began drinking vast quantities of champagne daily at the studio and smoking marijuana in his dressing room between scenes. His behavior became increasingly erratic and difficult for the cast and crew to manage. According to creator Sidney Sheldon's accounts, Hagman would often be sullen and antagonistic toward guest stars, deliberately ignoring them and spending time sulking in his dressing room rather than being professional on set. He wanted desperately to be the star of the show, but the audience had fallen in love with Barbara Eden's Jeannie character, and she consistently tested higher with viewers than anyone else in the show's history. This reality only made Hagman's behavior worse as the seasons progressed. Ultimately, the producers decided not to go through with the replacement plan, but the fact that they developed it to this level shows just how serious the situation had become. The show continued with Hagman in the role through all 5 seasons, though his personal struggles would continue to affect production throughout the series' run. Fact 14. The show used the same house set as Bewitched. If you were a fan of both I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched during the 1960s, you might have experienced a strange sense of déjà vu when watching certain episodes of Jeannie, and your instincts were absolutely correct. The house used for Dr. Alfred Bellows and his wife Amanda was actually the exact same set that was used for Samantha and Darren Stevens' home on the rival ABC show Bewitched, just redressed with different furniture and decorations to make it look like a completely different residence. This wasn't just a similar-looking house or a coincidence of architecture, but rather the literal same physical set being shared between 2 competing magical sitcoms that aired during the same time period. The reuse of this particular set is documented in multiple episodes, with the most notable example appearing in the Season 2 episode titled One of Our Bottles is Missing, which aired on January 30th, 1967. In this episode, Mrs. Bellows takes Jeannie's bottle to have a replica made for herself, and when Tony has to retrieve it before she discovers the secret, viewers get their first real look at the Bellows home. Sharp-eyed fans and television historians immediately recognized the distinctive layout and architectural features of the house, which had been appearing regularly on Bewitched since 1964. The production team simply changed the paint colors, swapped out the furniture pieces, and modified the decorative elements to transform Samantha's cozy suburban home into the residence of NASA's chief psychiatrist. This kind of set sharing was actually quite common in Hollywood during the studio era, as it saved production companies significant amounts of money on construction costs. But it becomes particularly amusing when you consider that Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie were direct competitors, both vying for viewers who enjoyed lighthearted comedies about magical women navigating the ordinary world. The fact that both shows were literally using the same domestic space adds an unexpected layer of connection between these 2 beloved series that defined the fantasy sitcom genre of the 1960s. Fact 15. Marriage killed the show. By the end of Season 4, in 1969, I Dream of Jeannie was holding steady in the ratings and seemed poised to continue for years to come. But NBC executive Mort Werner had other ideas that would ultimately doom the series. Werner became convinced that the unmarried living arrangement between Major Tony Nelson and Jeannie was too risque for television, even though the entire premise of the show had been built around this exact dynamic for 4 successful years. He contacted creator Sidney Sheldon and insisted that Tony and Jeannie needed to get married in Season 5, believing this would make the show more acceptable to viewers and advertisers who were uncomfortable with the implication of an unmarried woman living with a bachelor. Sheldon strongly disagreed with this decision and tried to convince Werner that marriage would destroy everything that made the show work. In his autobiography, Sheldon explained his reasoning to the network executive, telling him directly that the fun of Jeannie came from the sexual tension between the genie and her master, and that once they married, that dynamic would simply vanish and leave them with nothing interesting to work with. The entire cast echoed these concerns, with Barbara Eden herself later stating that she was deeply dissatisfied with the decision to have the characters marry because she believed it ruined the show's appeal. Despite all these objections from the people who actually understood what made I Dream of Jeannie successful, Werner remained convinced he knew better than everyone else. The network refused to renew the show unless Sheldon agreed to the marriage, so he reluctantly wrote a wedding episode for the 5th season. Just as Sheldon and the cast had predicted, the change killed the magic of the series. With Tony and Jeannie now married, the playful tension and forbidden romance that had driven the comedy for 4 years completely disappeared, replaced by standard sitcom married couple scenarios that felt generic and uninspired. The ratings declined throughout season 5, and NBC canceled I Dream of Jeannie at the end of that year, proving that sometimes network executives really don't know what's best for their own shows.